We'll start with Utah Department of Transportation. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Jason Simmons from Utah. Thanks.
Kim is a miracle worker. She convinced her legislature in 12 years to give her pavement preservation money. We've been at it for 45 years. In October of 1977, UDOT put out a research paper titled "Good Roads Cost Less." And that was the beginning of our pavement preservation journey. And so the overall theme here is, what a successful program looks like after that much time. So that paper came out in 1977. After that, in the 80s, we went to a plan for every section where we had time-based treatments. And then we started our pavement management system in DTIMS in 1992. So we've been using that for 30 years now on that time. And over that course of time, we have transitioned from time-based treatments to condition-based treatments. So keep beating the drum, keep going through there. So I'm just going to walk through some of our basically reporting, give you a report on where we sit and the successes our pavement preservation program works. So unlike most people in this room, we have essentially 4 pots of money, right? We have a high volume pot of money and a low volume pot of money, and that covers all of our pavement preservation and rehab. Over the last 5 years, we have broken down those last remaining silos of saying this is pavement preservation money and this is rehab money, and it's one pot of money for our pavement engineers to pick the right treatment at the right time and do the right thing. But that's a long time in the making, right? We've been at it for a long time. Kim's 12 to get her pavement preservation, and that would be the next step, right, is to come from that to one pot, making it work. We have discussed putting these 2 pots of high and low volume into one pot of money. I don't think we want to do that because they have slightly different management strategies, and there's some history here, and we have different condition level targets for the 2, and so we don't want to come there. A few years back, I got a reconstruct pot of money as well. That's the 3rd pot on the screen from there to hit what's been sleeping giants and get that stuff that's gone too far and go. And then we have additional money, which is the 4th pot on top of that. Like some other states mentioned, we have in-house chip crews, and we do almost all of our crack sealing in-house. So I did the math on that. I've never done it. I just added up those total dollars of pot and divided it by our total lane miles, our surface area. That equates to about $10,000 a year per lane mile of pavement, which if you do the math further, that's about $1.50 a square yard per year to maintain our pavements.
But that's fully funded?
We consider that fully funded. Yes, that maintains status quo.
Less than 6,000 right now?
Yeah. So that's our numbers for fully funded. You take your lane miles, take the numbers, come up, that's what we're making work coming through those numbers. So our high volume pavement condition goal has always been to maintain the existing pavement condition, right? Good roads cost less from that long philosophy. You can see from this graph that we are doing that successfully with that pot of money, which is our lagging indicator. On our low volume roads, we've actually had a goal to increase our pavement condition, which you can see here. Yesterday I made a comment that the inflation hit, and we've been down this road before. When we went down this road in 2008 with the oil prices spiking up and all of that, we were told, don't do any more pavement projects on our low volume roads. And we totally cut them off, and it was in-house maintenance, chip seals, and crack seal only. That trickled down to that number that you see on the left, which was 2017. And by the time we got to that condition level on that left bar, our legislature said, you guys should start fixing your low volume roads. That's an uncomfortable pavement condition. So if anybody asks you what pavement condition the public can't tolerate, well, it's somewhere around that bar on the left right there, about 20% poor. And so the legislature at that point gave us $40 million a year dedicated to the low volume, and that's when that low volume pot of money was created. To maintain those roads, that was funded at 40. It got dropped down to 35 million last year because we were improving that condition. Once we get the numbers above the lines, then it will transition to the same philosophy as the high volume roads of maintain existing condition. And we won't need quite as much money to maintain the existing condition as we needed to improve the existing condition. That's the pay me more to raise it up from there. So, I mean, that's a very good success story right there, right? We let it go. We didn't touch it for 10 years. We were able to improve the condition and bring it back. And then we'll be able to maintain it for less money. We use, those are, of course, that's our ultimate goal, right? Pavement condition. But that's a lagging indicator that comes in later. We use pavement preservation index of our leading indicator. This is the same thing that John talked about in Oregon. I think he called it treatment life years from there, that we're trying to replace that. So the goal is the one, right? To balance the number. You can see we're pretty close to balancing the number. Over the course, we're lagging in 24 at the end, but that doesn't include all of the maintenance projects that will happen in 24 yet. So that will get picked up and come from there. So overall, we're doing a pretty good job of hitting that index and that balanced surface area perspective there. And really, this is the number, this is one of our indicators that we use to get our region pavement engineers to do the right thing with that one pot of money, right? So if you're going to give one pot of money, preservation, rehab, all together, you have to have some indicators like this that indicate, hey, we need preservation, right? It's got to be the bulk of what you're doing, and the only way you can hit this number of one is to have a high amount of preservation in your program in comparison to rehab. Another leading indicator that we look at and we're tracking from here is that we've created some decision trees for all of our roadways. We have a rural, an urban, and an interstate decision tree that comes down to a preferred treatment. These are the same things that are in our pavement management systems, and the same, refined a little further, right? Because the pavement management system would say use a low seal, and then in this case specifically, we're saying on a rural roadway, the preferred seal is a chip seal from there. And then we are tracking, right, how much of these, I got a graph coming up, we're tracking how much of these match what that recommendation is, right? And the policy at the top for our pavement engineers is simply follow the decision tree or provide an explanation as why you didn't. We just want to think about it. There's reasons why that you don't follow your decision tree because this is a local area, but I want to be able to go to leadership as a statewide guy and say, yeah, we didn't follow our decision tree here for this reason. Documented, right? And that gets us the exceptions. That documentation will also help us improve the decision trees, right? Because when I fast forward into the future, have we consistently deviated from this tree for a specific reason? Maybe my tree is wrong. Maybe it should change. Maybe I should put another branch on there for a mountain road or something like that that's rural. I don't know, but we've tried to keep it very simple across those lines and just document, hey, this is where we didn't follow it. So if we look at that, if we look at those decision trees and we look at the recommendation, and so if this is light, heavy, and equal on those treatments. So say my decision tree and my condition DTIM said I should do a minor rehab. So if it recommended a minor rehab and I actually did a minor rehab, then that's equal, which is the blue bar. If I did a chip seal instead of a minor rehab, then that's a light treatment. And if I did a major rehab instead, then that's a heavy treatment. So we're looking at that and we're tracking over time. I actually got this graph from New York when I was at TRB in January and decided to implement it. I like this. And so this is a good gauge of how well you're following how well we're following our decision trees out of our pavement management software. Are we doing the treatment it recommends, or are we doing more? We're getting better into 23 and 24 as you look at that. The good news is that it's not skewed one way, right? So if you look at 22, that's almost a third, a third, a third. So we're off in both directions, I guess, in our pavement management system, which I guess would make the money add up correctly, right? So I spend more on the heavy treatment, I spend less on the light treatment, that adds up to the equal treatment, and I get a pretty good prediction out of my pavement management system software. So that's one of the indicators. Another indicator we're looking at in the front end right there, right, as we're doing what we're supposed to. And then one more way to look at that we are from this is the refined level of those decision trees. And so when that decision tree said that you should do a chip seal, or you should do a microsurface, or you should do an SMA or something like that, is that the treatment we actually did? And we are matching that really well. So our pavement management system is functioning really good, and our decision trees are functioning really good. We're doing that recommended treatment the vast majority of the time. So success, right? That's what we want. From there, another thing that we look at, I think this might be the flip of what Arizona showed me. This is the breakdown in surface area by preservation rehab. The dark blue bar in the middle is the reconstruction line from there. So we are probably, I think we're right around 70% preservation out of that pot of money that comes from there to make those surface area balance. And then the rehab bar is the purple on the top coming from there. And as it fluctuates from there. Of course, if the rehab bar gets bigger, the preservation gets shorter. There's the capacity projects that are outside of those pots of money that touch stuff that influences those numbers. And that's why you, like in whatever year has the big blue bar in the middle, 22 or 23 or whatever, that would have been a bunch of capacity projects that reconstructed the roadway that brought extra money into there and trickles across. 24 might come up again, like I said, in preservation because our maintenance chip seals come. So overall, pretty balanced and doing well. This might be a little tough to see from there, but this is the surface area by our treatment classes. So the two on the left are concrete repair and concrete repair with grind. Those are separated in our pavement management system. So those are by our region. Our southern half of the state, Region 4, is anti-concrete, so they don't have any, so hence they don't have any concrete repair on that graph. It's okay. We don't all have to be exactly the same from there. And the concrete repair, that functional repair bar, which is the third one in, that is mostly 1.5" SMA. Our SMAs perform fantastically well. They don't rut, they don't crack, they last a long time. 12 to 15 years, and 1.5" is sufficient to do that work. So if you go back to that low volume decision tree and that rural decision tree, we chip it, and when it gets a little bit worse, we do 1.5" of SMA, and then when it gets worse than that, then it gets into the rehab category, and it's probably something like a cold in place recycle with that SMA back on the top is the wearing course, and then forward again with the chip seals from there. So I like to refer to that functional repair as a poor man's rehab. I guess we could call it a rich man's preservation. Pick your nomenclature there. Is it 1.5" preservation, or is it rehab? Is it something in between? But that is a treatment that has served us well to go from there. The next bar is the high seals. Those are mostly open graded surface courses and bonded wearing courses in our urban areas. Some of it is 1.5" HMA treatments in the urban areas. We're experimenting with, or we're going to start experimenting with high mod HMA at 1.5". The question is, can I use like a 7622 high modified binder and get similar performance to the SMA with the more traditional HMA gradation, which should bring the cost of it down and the availability of it down and a little bit easier to produce. But that's to be determined. We've also been putting our open graded surface courses down with spray pavers, which appears to be working tremendously well, which solves the raveling bonded problem of those coming off that Oregon had that made them abandon that program. We had the same problems as Oregon. We solved the problem instead of abandoning the program and stuck from there. Jury's out on which is better between bonded wearing course and open graded surface course. Give me another couple years and I'll bring you the answer on those, and we keep going. The low seals, that's the by far, right? What we're doing, chip seals are by far our preferred treatment almost everywhere. Microsurfacing falls in that category as well. Microsurfacing is used when we want to fill some ruts from there, or when we have basically where the chips can't perform, right? So overall, the chip seal is the way that we prefer of our treatment, and then we go to a microsurface when chip seals don't work because of some trucks or turning movements or mountain passes or some instance where we've had some issues with the chip. And then it's the next one there. But the microsurface is a little bit more expensive, and it doesn't appear to give quite the life of the chip seal from there. And then of course, you have the rehabs going out the other way, right? And this is exactly what you want to see in a program where as the treatments get more expensive, we do less of them, right? We do more low seals than anything else, which is cheap, and from there. One thing that we don't track that some of the others do that Oregon mentioned is crack sealing and patching. Crack sealing is done, like I said, in-house by maintenance. It's done before all of the seals by our in-house maintenance crews, typically the year before. I'm working on a standard spec to do it in a contract if I have to from there, but mostly in-house, always before, never put down a chip seal without crack sealing it first. That's a bad idea. And all of these projects include patching. We call it soft spot repair. We put the item in all of our stuff and we go and patch localized areas before doing a chip seal or a functional repair or rehab or any of that in our contracts to just hit those areas of localized problems. So that's what I have at the end there. Yeah, success. That's what success looks like in an overall program. Questions?
You mentioned your pavement management system, so I was curious to know how is the benefit calculated or what factors are involved in your benefit?
There are resets put in place for each of those categories, the low sill, functional repair. I can't give them to you off the top of my head. I can give you a link, or if you Google the UDOT pavement management manual, it should come up fairly quickly, and then you could see the resets assigned to each of those treatment categories.
Jason, are those patching, is that done in-house personnel as well, just like the crack sealing?
No, it's done in part of the contract, and we actually have it went to a standard spec just recently, but we call it soft spot repair. And we have like a type, we have just in the asphalt, which is an asphalt repair, and then also into the base, and we pay for it by the square foot essentially, and we put that in as a contingency item in the contract. And then they go out in advance of their chip sealing or their milling, and then the construction engineer, the resident engineer, identifies those spots with the contractor and fixes them. And then they start at the top and go as deep as they need to solve the problem.
What's your time frame of doing that prior to putting your preservation treatment down?
So those happen right before in the same contract, right? Okay. And typically we haven't had a lot of failures. I know where you're headed with that. And we haven't seen a lot of failures in the chip seal over the top of those. A lot of times we'll spray a little bit extra emulsion on those patches to try to overcome that.
Because I see in Washington they do that a year prior. So I thought that was the best practice to share to other states. Lastly, Jason, is you talked a lot about the funding aspects. Is the federal aid funding used for your preservation treatments, or is it used on other things?
Those two pots, that high volume and low volume pot of money, that 160 million and 35 million, that 200 million, that is almost exclusively federal funding, just with the state match coming from there. So yeah, we use almost all of our federal funding for safety, preservation, and rehab of our pavements and our structures, and all the big capacity projects are state funded through our legislature.
Your crack sealing operation is done ahead of time, but I didn't hear if the funding is coming out of your pavement preservation funds.
So most of our crack sealing money is coming out of our maintenance funds. It was in that third bullet down from there. Our maintenance guys routinely crack seal, and it comes out of their maintenance budget. We do occasionally pay for it out of our preservation funds as part of a project, but the preference is to do it in-house because that's the most economical way to do it.
Jason, on that balance, and it's balanced by area, it's balanced by dollars, not by area.
Which one?
When you were talking about that one, yeah, that one there, could you explain that a little bit more?
So this is the same. This is what John referred to as treatment life years. And so the idea is if I have 1,000 surface areas, I lose 1,000 surface areas of life a year. And a chip seal puts back in 7 years of life times the surface area, right? So it's got to come up to 1 at the end of the day.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
The SMAs, they're very impressive when I drive through your state. We did some SMAs, but we have a couple still left. Have you fog sealed your SMAs, or do you chip seal them, or do you basically just mill them off when they're done?
We don't fog seal anything. we had some bad experiences in the past and walked away from it and have never come back to it. It may work now, technology has changed, but no, the SMAs that have been down the longest, we are starting to chip seal them now. So we would do whatever the preferred low seal is over the top of that, a chip seal or a micro over the SMA. And the hope, especially on these low volume roadways, a lot of these roadways are only 2-3 inches, right? So we put an 1.5 inch overlay of SMA over the top of them. The idea is that we would be able to come back and chip them a couple of times and then do the SMA, and you just got this repeated life cycle of add an 1.5 inch of SMA, chip it a couple of times, add an 1.5 inch of SMA, chip it a couple of times, and roll down the road with that perpetual pavement. That's our planned strategy.
And then you talked, oh, sorry, John. On the, and so in that cycle, so you said now it's, and now maybe it was Kim, it's not time-based but performance-based on that cycle is what's driving that, and so that gets you 25 years or so?
Yeah, I mean, potentially we haven't lived out that whole cycle with the SMA, but yeah, that would be the idea, is that you get 12 to 15 on the first SMA, and then you get 7 to 10 on each subsequent chip after that, right? Now, the longer the road that's been there, it's going to shorten, so that's the hope.
Thanks, Jason.
The preceding was produced by the National Center for Pavement Preservation. More information can be found on the web at pavementpreservation.org. Additional support provided by Michigan State University.